The faded photograph slipped from my fingers as I stumbled back, heart racing. In that moment, I realized the truth. The family I had loved for 27 years was built on a lie. My mother's laughter, my father's warm hugs, they were all just masks hiding betrayal. The clock chimed midnight, echoing the finality of my shattered world. I was not the daughter they claimed. I was the hidden secret of a past I never knew. My name is Marissa, and I'm about to uncover the darkness that lies beneath the surface of our family. With the weight of the letter still heavy in my hands, I felt an urgent need to confront my parents. The walls of our cozy home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, trapping me in a labyrinth of uncertainty and dread. I could hear Jake's laughter drifting from the living room as he played with his toys, blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing around him. It pained me to think that his innocence might be shattered if he ever learned the truth. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation I never wanted to have, but knew I needed to. "Mom, Dad, can we talk?" I called out, my voice shaking slightly as I approached the living room. Susan looked up from her knitting, her brow furrowing in concern, while David paused the video game he had been engrossed in. Their faces shifted from curiosity to apprehension, and I immediately regretted breaking the fragile peace that hung in the air. Jake, sensing the tension, stopped his play and turned to look at me with wide, innocent eyes, but I had no time to reassure him. "Is something wrong?" my mother asked, her tone edged with the tension I felt. David's eyes darted between us, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. I wanted to scream, to unleash all the frustrations that had been building inside me, but instead, I held the letter tighter, clenching it in my fist as if it were a lifeline. "Something is very wrong," I replied, my heart pounding as I laid the letter on the coffee table between us. The soft thud echoed in the silence, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my mind. I found this, and it raised more questions than it answered. Susan's gaze flickered to the letter, and a shadow passed over her face, as if I had unveiled a long-forgotten ghost. "What are you talking about, Marissa?" David asked, his voice steady but laced with an undertone of worry. I could see him trying to maintain control, the same way he always did when faced with difficult situations, but I had grown tired of tiptoeing around their secrets. "It's about you two," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of my fury and hurt. "There are things in this letter that I had no idea about, things that change everything." Jake, caught in the middle of an uncharted emotional territory, shifted uncomfortably on the couch, his eyes darting between our faces like a butterfly caught in a storm. Susan's expression hardened, her lips pursed in a tight line as she glanced at David. I could see the unspoken words passing between them, a silent communication that excluded me entirely. "Marissa, let's not overreact," David attempted to diffuse the situation. His voice was calm, but I could detect the tremor beneath the surface, a hint of the fear he held for the truth that was about to emerge. "Overreact? You called this overreacting?" I snapped, the frustration spilling over. "I've been living a lie, and you're trying to downplay it. How can I trust anything you've told me after finding this?" As I spoke, my voice rose, fueled by the emotional turmoil that had been simmering inside me. I was no longer the obedient daughter. I was a young woman demanding answers. "Marissa, please," Susan interjected, her tone softer yet still distant. It was the same tone she used to quell arguments, but this time it felt insincere. "There are things we wanted to protect you from." "Your father and I? Protect me from what? The truth?" I cut her off, the frustration boiling within me threatening to overflow. "I deserve to know who I am and what my family really is. You owe me that much." The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding as I stood my ground. David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen countless times when he was stressed. "We didn't want you to have to deal with this. We thought it was best to keep it hidden." His sincerity was evident, but it only ignited the fire of betrayal within me further. Sometimes, secrets are meant to protect the people we love. Protecting me from what? I repeated, my voice firmer now. From the pain of knowing the truth? Because that's all I feel right now, betrayed and confused. I locked eyes with each of them, searching for understanding, yet finding only the shadows of their past mistakes. "Marissa," Susan started, but the pleading in her eyes only fueled my resolve. I could no longer play the role of the dutiful daughter who accepted everything without question. "I want you to be honest with me," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "Tell me what happened. Tell me why I feel like I don't belong in my own family." A heavy silence descended, and I could see the flicker of internal struggle etched across their faces. I could sense the walls they had built around their hearts, protecting their secrets, but also trapping me in a web of uncertainty. Jake shifted in his seat again, sensing the tension, and my heart ached for him. He should not have to witness this, yet I knew that I needed to break through the barriers that had kept us apart. Finally, David sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. "Maybe it's time we stop hiding," he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly as he looked at Susan. "You deserve to know the truth, even if it hurts." I felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. It was the first step toward unearthing the reality I had been denied for so long. The tension in the room hung thick as I waited for my mother's response. Susan's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features as she turned to face David, her eyes narrowing. I could tell she was processing his words, caught between disbelief and the instinct to defend the carefully crafted facade of our family life. "What do you mean, David?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. The air felt electric as my heart raced. I longed for my mother to understand the importance of this moment. David took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "There are things from our past that we've kept hidden, things that have shaped us into who we are today," he began, his gaze locked onto Susan as if trying to anchor her amidst the storm that was about to unfold. He was brave to push forward, but I felt the tremors of my own fear ripple through me. What secrets could possibly emerge from this discussion? My hands trembled in my lap, a silent testament to my unease. Susan crossed her arms defensively, her face a mask of stoicism. "I don't understand why this is necessary," she said, her voice cool and unwavering. "We've built a life together, David. Can't we just leave the past in the past?" Her words pierced through me like shards of glass, echoing the very sentiments I had often felt when confronted with family issues. The truth, however painful, was like a wound that needed to be exposed in order to heal. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Mom, please," I implored softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need you to hear him. I need us to be honest with each other." I reached out instinctively, placing my hand on her arm, a gesture of support in a sea of confusion. Jake, sensing the tension, looked up from his toy, his innocent curiosity breaking the charged atmosphere as he ventured, "Are we having a family talk? I like those." His bright, naive enthusiasm felt like a stark contrast to the darkness that loomed over us. "Not quite, buddy," David replied gently, a small smile breaking through the seriousness of the moment. "This is a different kind of talk. It's about some things that happened a long time ago." I could see the wheels turning in Jake's mind, but he didn't push for further explanation, sensing the heaviness in the air. I admired his innocence, a reminder of the carefree days before the complexities of adulthood weighed heavily on my heart. As David began to share snippets of the past, his voice trembling as he recounted moments of tension between him and Susan, I could feel a wave of emotions crashing over me. He spoke of his own struggles, the guilt he carried for decisions he made when they were just starting out. Each revelation felt like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle falling into place, yet the picture remained incomplete, shrouded in shadows. "There were times when I felt lost," he admitted, his eyes reflecting regret. "I let fear dictate my choices, and it pushed us all away." Susan's expression softened, the rigid lines of her face beginning to blur with the hints of vulnerability. "David, we both made mistakes," she said, her tone shifting. "But we also built a life filled with love, haven't we? Jake and Marissa, they're our heart." Her words held a certain warmth, yet they also laid bare the unspoken reality that our family was founded on unacknowledged pain. I felt my chest tighten as I realized how deeply intertwined our lives were with their past. The weight of their secrets had been an invisible presence, an unacknowledged ghost hovering at the edges of our family gatherings. "But that's just it," I pressed, my voice shaking with a mix of frustration and desperation. "Love isn't enough if it's built on lies. We need to confront the truth so we can move forward." I could see the flicker of understanding in my mother's eyes, but doubt still clung to her like a shadow. David nodded, a hint of gratitude in his gaze. "Marissa is right. We can't keep pretending everything is okay when it isn't. It's time for us to face what we've avoided for too long." I felt a surge of hope at his words, a flame igniting within me as I realized we were on the cusp of a breakthrough, even if it meant plunging into the depths of discomfort. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, eager to listen. Jake, ever the innocent observer, asked, "Are we going to be okay?" His question hung in the air, pure and simple, cutting through the complexity of the moment. My heart ached for him. He didn't deserve to bear the weight of our turmoil. I glanced at him, forcing a smile. "Yes, we will be okay," I promised, even if I wasn't entirely sure what that would look like. Susan exhaled deeply, her defenses beginning to crumble. "Maybe we've been too afraid to talk about things that matter," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought protecting you both meant keeping the past buried." A single tear slipped down her cheek, a sign that she was finally willing to confront her own emotions, even if only partially. As we stood on the brink of revelations, I understood that healing would not happen overnight. It would require us all to be brave, to reach into the depths of our pain and begin the hard work of forgiveness. I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. Perhaps this could be the turning point we all needed. "Let's start by sharing our stories," I suggested, my voice steadier now. "If we can open up, we can understand each other better." In that moment, I could see a flicker of hope in my parents' eyes, a tiny spark that hinted at a path toward reconnection. With Jake still blissfully unaware of the gravity of our discussion, I realized how crucial it was for us to mend the fractures in our family for his sake too. This was only the beginning, but as long as we were willing to confront the truth together, I believed we could rebuild what had been broken. As I prepared to share my thoughts, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of determination. I understood now that this journey would not just be about uncovering the past, but also about forging a new future, one built on honesty and understanding. I hoped that by breaking down the walls between us, we could emerge stronger than ever before. As I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers tracing the edges of the letter, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation that lay ahead. My parents were in the living room, their voices a low murmur, punctuated by the occasional laughter from Jake, who was blissfully unaware of the tension simmering just beneath the surface. I glanced toward him, his face lit up with excitement as he played with his toys, and I felt a pang of guilt. He deserved a happy childhood, free from the burdens of adult emotions. But I knew that if I didn't confront this situation now, it would only fester and potentially harm him later. "Mom, Dad, can we talk?" I called out, my voice shaking slightly despite my efforts to sound steady. The laughter in the room stilled, and I felt their eyes on me, curiosity and concern mingling in their gazes. Susan looked at me, her expression carefully neutral, while David shifted in his seat, a telltale sign that he sensed the gravity of the moment. I motioned for them to join me at the table, my heart pounding as I prepared to lay bare the emotions I had been grappling with since reading that letter. As they sat down, I noticed how David's hands clasped nervously together, and Susan's gaze flitted between me and Jake, who was oblivious to the storm brewing around him. I took a deep breath and unfolded the letter, my fingers trembling slightly. "I found this letter from you." "Mom," I began, my voice wavering. "It opened up a lot of questions for me about our family and the things we've never talked about." The silence was palpable, and for a moment I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the safety of silence and the unknown depths of truth. Susan's eyes widened, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing the implications of what I was about to reveal. "Marissa," she started, but I held up a hand, needing to assert myself in this moment. "Please, let me finish," I said, my resolve hardening. "I want to understand why we've always felt like we're walking on eggshells around each other, why there are these unspoken rules that keep us from being truly open." I glanced at David, hoping to find some sign of support, but his expression was a mixture of apprehension and regret, and my heart sank. "I know there's a lot we don't say," David finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "But some things are better left in the past." I shook my head, frustration bubbling to the surface. "But what good has that done us? I feel like I'm living in a house filled with secrets. How can we move forward if we don't confront what's been holding us back?" Jake, sensing the shift in atmosphere, looked up from his toys, confusion painting his innocent features. "Why are you guys yelling?" he asked, his small voice cutting through the tension. I forced a smile, trying to shield him from the storm brewing above us. "We're not yelling, Jake. We're just talking about something important." He nodded, accepting my explanation, but I could see the worry lingering in his eyes. "Marissa, I understand your feelings. I do," Susan said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "But some things are too painful to revisit. I've tried to protect you and your brother from that pain." Her words struck a chord, echoing the very sentiments that had caused me so much confusion. "But don't you see?" I replied, the urgency in my tone rising. "Protecting us by hiding the truth has only left us feeling more lost. I need to know, we all need to know, what really happened." David's gaze fell to the table, and I could tell he was struggling with his emotions. "There were mistakes," he finally admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "Things I wish I could change, but I can't. I never wanted to hurt you or your mother, but sometimes we make choices that have consequences we can't foresee." I leaned forward, desperate for connection. "But we can't change the past if we don't talk about it. I don't want to be a part of a family that hides from its own history. I want us to face it together, even if it's hard." Susan's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I noticed a glimmer of vulnerability in her eyes. "Marissa, I never meant to shut you out. I thought I was doing what was best for you both." Her voice broke slightly, and I felt a pang of empathy for her struggles. But perhaps I was wrong. The admission hung in the air, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we were at the beginning of something transformative. "Maybe it's time we all shared our truths, however painful they may be," I suggested gently. "I know it won't be easy, but we have to try, for Jake's sake and for ourselves." David nodded slowly, the weight of his past choices evident on his face. "You're right," he said, a newfound resolve creeping into his voice. "We can't keep pretending everything is fine. It's time we confront what's been tearing us apart." Jake, still sitting nearby, looked back and forth between our faces, sensing the shift in energy. "Can I be part of this too?" he asked innocently, his eyes wide with curiosity. I smiled softly at my little brother, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. "Of course, buddy, you're part of our family, and that means you deserve to know the truth as well." As we exchanged glances, I realized that this was just the beginning. It would take time, patience, and a lot of understanding. But perhaps together, we could begin to mend what had been broken. The first step had been taken, and with it came the promise of healing, even in the face of deep injustice. As I sat down with Jake, the gravity of our conversation settled heavily in the air. I could see the innocence in his eyes. He had no idea what he was stepping into. I hesitated, searching for the right words to introduce this new reality to him, one that had been hidden beneath layers of family secrets for far too long. You know, Jake, there were things about Mom and Dad that I didn't fully understand until recently. They made choices that affected all of us. I began gently, gauging his response. He furrowed his brow, clearly confused but eager to listen. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my responsibility as an older sister. It all started when I found a letter from Mom. It talked about feelings she never expressed out loud. Things that happened before you were born. She mentioned a time when they weren't as happy as we thought they were. Jake's eyes widened, and I could see he was trying to process what I was saying. His innocence was both a comfort and a heartache. I didn't want to shatter his view of our family. "But why would she keep that from us?" he asked, his voice small. I could feel my heart ache for him, for the realization that our parents' imperfections could change the way he saw them. "I think sometimes people think they're protecting us by keeping secrets. They believe that if we don't know about their struggles, we'll be happier. But it's not always true, is it?" I answered softly, wishing I could shield him from the harsh realities of adult life. Jake nodded slowly, still processing. "So what are we supposed to do now?" he asked, his tone shifting from confusion to concern. The weight of his question hung in the air, and I realized that it was no longer just about me. It was about him, too. "I think we need to talk to them. We deserve to know why they made those choices," I proposed, feeling both anxious and resolute. I could see the spark of determination in his eyes, reminding me of the unwavering hope that often resides in youth. "Can we do that, together?" he asked, a hint of eagerness creeping into his voice. "Yes, together," I affirmed, feeling a sense of purpose. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but perhaps facing the truth would bring us closer. Later that evening, as we gathered for dinner, an uneasy silence enveloped the table. I glanced at my parents. Dad was focused on his plate, and Mom seemed lost in her thoughts. Jake, oblivious to the tension, chatted about his day, his innocent laughter ringing through the room like a fragile bell. I watched as my father's fingers tightened around his fork, and my mother's gaze flickered towards him, filled with unspoken words. It was clear that the shadow of our revelations loomed over the meal. After dinner, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. It was now or never. "Mom, Dad, can we talk? There's something important I need to discuss with you both," I said, my voice quivering slightly. The atmosphere shifted immediately as they exchanged wary glances. "Sure, what's on your mind?" Dad asked, though his tone revealed a hint of apprehension. "Jake and I found a letter," I started, looking directly at my mother. "It made us realize that there are things about your past that you've never talked to us about. We want to understand." The silence was deafening, and I felt the tension rise as my mother's eyes widened in surprise. I could see her processing my words, searching for a response. I didn't think it would matter to you," she finally murmured, her voice strained. "I thought I was doing the right thing by keeping those memories buried." I could see David's expression shift to one of concern. "We all deserve to know the truth, Susan," he said gently, placing his hand on hers. Jake glanced between our parents and me, his youthful confusion more evident now. "What kind of truth?" he asked, his innocent curiosity cutting through the heaviness. I could sense the panic rising in my mother's eyes as she grappled with how to respond. "It's complicated, Jake," she replied hesitantly, as if searching for the right words that wouldn't hurt him. "When your father and I were younger, we faced challenges that affected our relationship. Decisions were made that we believed were for the best, but they weren't always right." Her admission hung in the air, and I felt the room shift as years of unspoken tension began to unravel. Jake's brow furrowed as he processed her words, and I could see the innocence in his face begin to flicker. Like what? He asked, now genuinely intrigued but also concerned. My parents exchanged another look, and I could feel the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. Like when we didn't always agree on how to raise you two. David began slowly, his voice thick with regret. There were times I felt like I wasn't the man your mother needed me to be, and in my frustration, I made choices I regret. His honesty was refreshing, yet it made my heart ache all the more. Mom took a deep breath. I thought that by staying silent, I was protecting you. I never wanted you to feel the burden of our past. I watched as her resolve began to crumble, the emotional distance she had maintained for years seeming to fade away. But I see now that silence only creates more distance. The revelation hung in the air, a palpable tension that felt both liberating and daunting. I glanced at Jake. His wide eyes reflected a mix of fear and fascination, as if he were witnessing the storm of adulthood for the first time. I reached out and squeezed his hand, hoping to ground us both in this moment of truth. Maybe it's not too late to fix things, I said softly, my voice filled with hope. We can start fresh as a family. The room seemed to collectively inhale, and I could feel the tentative connection building between us. David nodded slowly, his expression filled with a mix of remorse and determination. You're right, Marissa. We can work through this together, even if it's difficult. As the weight of those words settled around us, I felt a flicker of something powerful, a belief that perhaps we could navigate this tumultuous journey together, one step at a time. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but as I looked around at my family, I realized that healing was possible, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. The days following that heartfelt conversation with my father were marked by an odd mixture of hope and trepidation. It felt as if we had opened a door that had long been sealed, its hinges rusty and reluctant to move. The air in our house felt different, charged with unspoken thoughts and emotions that floated just beneath the surface. I found myself watching my parents closely, trying to catch glimpses of the softer sides of them that had often been buried under layers of tension. Susan, usually so focused on her tasks, seemed to linger at the kitchen table longer, her hands absent-mindedly tracing the patterns of the wood as though she were contemplating a deeper truth. David had started to share stories from his childhood, fragments of his past that I had never heard before. These stories, while laced with humor and nostalgia, also bore the shadows of regrets that haunted him. Jake, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling around us, continued to be the light in our lives. He had taken it upon himself to plan a family game night, a simple idea that felt monumental in the context of our fractured dynamics. As I watched him dart around the living room, his excitement infectious, I couldn't help but smile. It was a reminder of the joy that once permeated our household. The thought of laughing together again was both exhilarating and terrifying. Would my parents be able to set aside their differences, even for a few hours? The night of the game night arrived with a nervous energy. I set the table with snacks, each chip and dip a silent prayer for unity. David and Susan exchanged glances that seemed to convey 1,000 unspoken words, their apprehension palpable. When Jake clapped his hands and announced the first game, a classic board game, I felt the weight of our shared history pressing down on us, almost suffocating. The game started off awkwardly. David and Susan bickered playfully over rules, their banter tinged with an edge that reminded me of their hidden frustrations. I found myself trapped between laughter and discomfort, sensing the tension simmering just below the surface. Jake, oblivious to the undercurrents, cheered for both sides, his laughter ringing out like a bell, cutting through the awkwardness. I joined in his enthusiasm, laughing louder than I felt, desperately trying to drown out the knots twisting in my stomach. As the night wore on, however, something began to shift. David, perhaps sensing the need to break the ice, leaned over and playfully nudged Susan, a mischievous grin on his face. She looked surprised. Then slowly her lips curled into a small smile, and for a moment I dared to believe that we were bridging a gap. But just when I thought we might be turning a corner, the reality of our situation crashed back in. In a fit of excitement, Jake knocked over a glass of soda and it spilled across the table, soaking the game board. The moment was a catalyst, igniting the tension that had been brewing. Susan sighed heavily, her disappointment evident, while David's face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and frustration. It felt like a dam had broken. Their repressed feelings surged forth, and before I could intervene, Susan snapped at David, blaming him for being careless with the drinks. "If you hadn't been so busy trying to win, maybe he wouldn't have knocked it over," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with bitterness. The air thickened with silence, and Jake's innocent smile faltered as he processed the sudden shift in mood. I felt my heart race. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I couldn't let this moment derail us. Taking a deep breath, I stepped in, my voice firm yet gentle. "Mom, Dad, we're all just trying to have fun together. Let's not lose sight of that." My words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our collective fears. David looked at me, his eyes softening, and for the first time that evening, I saw a flicker of understanding. Susan's shoulders, tense with frustration, gradually relaxed. "You're right, Marissa," she said, her voice quieter now. "I'm sorry, David. It's just been hard for me to let go sometimes." David nodded, his expression one of acceptance. "I understand. It's been hard for all of us." The game resumed, this time with a newfound energy. We played and laughed, the earlier tension gradually dissipating like morning fog under the sun. Jake was ecstatic, delighted to see us engaging with one another. My heart swelled with warmth at the sound of his laughter, an innocent reminder of the family we used to be. Yet, beneath the laughter, I knew we still had a long way to go. There were unresolved issues lurking in the shadows, and while that evening felt like a step forward, I understood that healing was a process, not a destination. As the night drew to a close, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. It had been a small victory, but in the grand scheme of things, it felt monumental. While I understood that we weren't fixed overnight, I was beginning to believe that we could rebuild what had been broken. After Jake went to bed, I found myself sitting with my parents in the dim light of the living room. "Thank you for tonight," I said softly, meeting their gazes. It meant a lot to me. Susan reached out and squeezed my hand, a gesture that spoke volumes. "We're trying, Marissa. I know it's not easy." David nodded in agreement, his eyes sincere. "We're committed to working through this, as a family." In that moment, the weight of our past felt a little lighter. We were still navigating a complex web of emotions, but I realized that love, even when tangled with hurt, could guide us back to each other. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but think about the power of shared experiences. They had the ability to heal, to bridge divides that seemed insurmountable. I found comfort in the idea that so many others might have stories like ours, stories of struggle, conflict, and ultimately hope. I wondered how many families had faced similar crossroads and come out stronger on the other side. If you're reading this, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences. What challenges have you faced within your family, and how have you navigated them? Sharing our stories can illuminate paths for others, bringing light to the darkest corners of our hearts. As I stood in the living room, clutching the letter that had changed everything, the weight of my family's secrets pressed heavily on my chest. My parents were in the kitchen, their voices low and strained, but I could still hear the tension simmering between them. David's laughter used to fill our home, but lately it felt stifled, drowned out by an undercurrent of resentment. Susan moved around the kitchen with her usual efficiency, but her body language spoke volumes. She seemed closed off, her back rigid as she poured a cup of tea. I wanted to be a peacemaker, to bridge the growing chasm that had appeared in our family, yet the pain of that letter loomed over me like a dark cloud, casting shadows on my every thought. Jake was blissfully unaware, his laughter ringing out from the living room as he played with his toys. I envied his innocence. The way he could find joy in the simplest of things, unburdened by the complexities that plagued my parents and me. I made my way into the room, forcing a smile as I sat next to him. He looked up, his bright eyes sparkling with excitement. "Marissa, look! I built a rocket ship!" He gestured proudly at the colorful blocks scattered across the floor, each piece stacked with care. I couldn't help but admire his creativity. It was a reminder of the childhood dreams I once held, dreams that felt so far away now. "That's amazing, Jake. Where are you going in your rocket?" I asked, hoping to ignite his imagination further and momentarily distract myself from the turmoil inside me. "To the moon," he declared, grinning from ear to ear. I felt a pang of nostalgia as I recalled the countless nights we spent stargazing, our heads filled with dreams of distant galaxies and adventures beyond our reach. Those moments seemed so innocent, untouched by the complexities that now riddled our family. "Can I come with you?" I asked, feigning enthusiasm, trying to hold on to that fleeting moment of joy. "Of course, but you have to be the pilot." He handed me a small toy steering wheel, and for a brief moment, I found solace in his world, a world where I could escape the reality that awaited me just outside that room. But the spell was broken when I heard my parents' raised voices cutting through the laughter. I felt a surge of anger mixed with an overwhelming sadness. Why couldn't they see the hurt their fighting was causing? Why couldn't they try to work through their issues for the sake of Jake, for the sake of our family? As I reluctantly left the rocket ship, I moved towards the kitchen, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. "Mom, Dad?" I called softly, my voice barely above a whisper. They turned to me, surprise etched on their faces. David's brow was furrowed, and Susan's lips were pressed into a thin line. "Can we talk?" Susan nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine as if gauging the emotional storm brewing within me. "Of course, honey. Is everything all right?" The sincerity in her voice cut through my hesitation. "Not really. I found the letter you wrote, Mom. The one about everything." As the words hung in the air, I felt a silence settle, heavy and suffocating. David's expression shifted, a mixture of concern and regret crossing his features, while Susan's face paled as realization washed over her. I didn't mean for you to see that," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "I know, but we need to talk about it, about everything. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not." My hands shook slightly as I spoke, the urgency of the moment pushing me forward. David stepped closer, his presence both comforting and intimidating. "Marissa, it's complicated. Your mother and I have been trying to protect you and Jake from this mess. But you're not protecting us, you're just pushing us further away. I can feel the distance growing, and it hurts." My voice cracked as I spoke, each word laced with the emotional turmoil I had kept bottled up for so long. Susan reached for my hand, her grip firm yet gentle. "I'm so sorry, Marissa. We never wanted to hurt you. We thought we were doing the right thing." "What right thing? Hiding the truth? Keeping secrets? That's not how families work." I felt the frustration rising within me, a volcano ready to erupt. "If you really care about us, then you need to be honest. We deserve that much." Jake peeked into the kitchen, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" he asked, his innocent eyes wide with concern. "Nothing, buddy. We're just having a grown-up conversation," David assured him, but I could see the worry in Jake's gaze. I didn't want him to carry this burden too. "Can we talk later?" I asked, my heart breaking as I watched him retreat to the living room. I turned back to my parents, the silence thick with unspoken truths. "We have to address what's going on, together. No more avoiding it." Susan nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're right, Marissa. We owe it to you and Jake to be honest." I took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. "Then let's start now. No more secrets." It was a small step, But for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were on the brink of something new, a chance to heal, to rebuild, and to embrace the truth, no matter how painful it might be.